Thank you for inviting me. And when Mr. President was talking, I attempted at locating myself in the picture. So it seems I am between a dialogue and integration. I hope my talk illustrates a number of points made by Professor Mazet and Professor McGrath. The title of my presentation is a thesis or claim. Thesis of faith are non-standard epistemic factor. I should explain the title. First, I understand thesis of faith as statements belonging to a doctrine. I haven't used the term claims of religion or so because religion is a complex phenomenon. You have here a number of dimensions of religion. So like a doctrine, moral norms, cult, institutes, values, communities, etc. So to avoid misunderstandings, I will use the expression thesis of faith as claims, statements belonging to a doctrine. If we accept that theology elaborates statements of faith, then you may interpret my claim as thesis of theology, work as non-standard epistemic factors in science. Behind my talk, there is a presupposition, and also it is a presupposition beyond the doctrine that statements are true in a classical sense of adequatio intellectus et rei. That is, they appeal to reason, not to emotions. The second term in my title are epistemic factors. I take this notion from Macmillan. And what are epistemic factors? Epistemic factor is anything that a scientist takes as a substantial part of her or his argumentation. The term anything ultimately refers then to statements, linguistic expressions. Why do I claim so? Well, argumentation consists of statements. Then, argumentation provides reasons to accept a statement, whatever it is. It might be even a norm. It is an execution of human rationality. Our rationality requires we argue for our claims. The fact that scientists provide argumentation for their claims indicates that science is seen as a rational enterprise. So justification is necessary for doing good science. And then epistemic means here that science is seen as cognitive enterprise. So behind it, there is an idea of a human being who is capable of cognizing, arguing, deciding. So behind it, there is an idea of the human being as a rational being. I can argue for all those claims, but these are the background behind what I will say. Now, I invite you to imagine you are researchers. For next, let us say, 15 minutes, you are researchers. And we are doing good science. We attempt at doing good science. Now, we need to argue for our claims, we need to provide argumentation. Macmillan distinguishes standard epistemic factors, and these are claims that assume a certain idea what science is. For example, consistency is very easy examples. Non-standard epistemic factors. These are claims that seem to be outside of conventionally understood science, for example, as metaphysics or theology, etc. But they function in science serving to warrant scientific conclusion. I use the term conclusion in a broader sense than just simply deductive inference. The first problem we encounter as researchers is that anything may be taken as non-standard epistemic factor. For example, a claim made by an astrologue. How can I answer this possible objection? Well, I follow here also Macmillan, namely that in the course of doing science, we learn about the universe, but we learn also how to learn. We learn how to do science. So certain claims disappear from the stock of possible non-standard epistemic factors. Now, there are two possible ways of arguing for my claim. One is a sort of historical path, namely you analyze various cases and you show those claims that belong, for example, to a religious doctrine, to a metaphysics or other domain of inquiry. Or you can take a more philosophical approach, analytical approach, and you analyze a structure of research. And then the path I take in my talk. Now, again, these are remarks, certain things we've learned about science, and we've learned from the philosophy of science. The first thing is that scientific research is a series of decisions. I hope you noticed I stopped talking about scientific knowledge or anything like that. I'm talking about scientific research, so a kind of action. So, scientific research is a series of decisions from the choice of an object of inquiry and an aspect which we are going to inquire, questions we are going to pose, etc. The choice of methods, the choice of collecting data, etc., up to disseminating results to whom and through what channels we will disseminate our results. The second thing is, any research assumes some background knowledge. To put it simply, things by itself do not have labels, which thesis they can serve for as evidence. And the underdetermination thesis, by itself, evidence does not prove or disprove a hypothesis. So evidence alone does not dictate the choice of theories or acceptance of a hypothesis. Again, these are things pretty well known in the contemporary philosophy of science. And I take this view of scientific research, and now Why are we doing science the way we do? Why do we require argumentation? Science aims at providing knowledge and understanding the structure and workings of the universe. So it works with presuppositions about the universe. For example, it's a cosmos, not a chaos. It's also about us, that we have access to that reality. And now, we are saying, as researchers, we wish to argue for our research decisions. Argumentation means there is a requirement of rationality. Why to be rational? Well, one answer is that rational or irrational is a problem of values, and since these are values, you may choose whatever you wish. Well, it's not impossible. There are alternative sciences, and there are the Society of Flat Earth, etc. So it's a real alternative. The answer, too, is I should be rational, for reason belongs to my nature. The essence has a normative power. I am rational, and therefore I should be rational. How can I justify this claim? Well, the argument from faith. I am created in the image and likeness of God person, and God created us as explorers. So it seems we cannot do science in an irrational way. So let us now decide about a research. Here I take an example from Michael Scriven. The Ministry of Education asks the Social Science Department to solve a practical problem, how to maintain the classroom discipline. So we specify the goal. We need efficient means to an aim, which the ministry says. Assume that the concept of classroom discipline is known and defined, etc., not to engage into various understandings. Now, the Social Science Department gives a solution. You have it on the presentation. Wire students to a teacher's desk and give a shock when the discipline is broken. Is it a good solution? Well, what's wrong with this solution? Certainly not efficiency. The answer is pretty simple. The solution ignores the knowledge of who students are. And who are students? It's a substantial part of our background knowledge. So when we operationalize a problem, the means of maintaining classroom discipline, we should take it into account. The crucial issue is ignored, namely that the student possesses dignity, and this dignity does not allow us to use that means. Dignity is a descriptive, evaluative term. So this sort of value judgments belong to science as a part of background knowledge. So external, internal doesn't work that way. How to argue for dignity? The first answer, it's an element only of a specific culture. Is accepted within a special social context. What's the limit? Well, I could offer that solution to a ministry in another country where this claim about the dignity is not accepted. Answer to: students are a person, and the dignity belongs to the essence of personhood. How to argue for the latter claim? Here is the moment where normative anthropology becomes normative theology. We need to argue why, and the answer is because God created us in that way, in His image and likeness. Now, maybe we should stop that argumentation. Maybe we should say, this solution is not useful. So it's a bad solution because it's not useful. Well, if it's not useful, it's not a solution. But if I claim only this, I would say that scientists are minds to hire. They accept background knowledge on demand. If the ministry accepts students have dignity, fine. If the ministry does not accept, fine. So science becomes very strange. Maybe we should stop simply at the dignity, at the claim students have dignity, and we don't need to go to this, let us say, theological area. In practice, we may, because it's very accepted in our culture, but we must argue if another view appears. For example, that female students don't have dignity that restricts means to maintain classroom discipline, and for male students you cannot use, and for male you use. Now you need to argue. But if it's forbidden to argue, if it's forbidden to ask and argue, science becomes dogmatic. It is so. Now, science is global, so sooner or later there will be a debate on background knowledge. And in my example, the claim students have dignity belonged to the background knowledge to design a specific research. So, such a debate cannot be outside of science if we take science to be autonomous and rational. An interesting conclusion then was already here. Our knowledge is not compartmental, and our life cannot be compartmental. Why? Because then scientists would live in axiological bifurcation. As a scientist, I think people should be freezed to death to inquire into the impact of temperature on the human body. As a Catholic, I protest. Well, so the conclusion is there is no methodological isolationism between cognitive domains. And a hypothesis and a question. The history shows that certain claims disappeared as non-cognitive factors. So it might be the other way around. That is, certain claims that were not taken into account so far may enter as non-standard epistemic factor. A question, maybe a certain thesis functioning as non-standard becomes standard. To answer that question will require not only understanding what science is, but also another talk. I have 4 seconds, so just for the last slide. Thank you for your attention.